Hello and welcome to the Business of Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Eric Rosenberg. Over the years, I've had the privilege of helping businesses in the meetings and event industry grow and succeed. And I'm excited to share that experience with you. If you feel alone and overwhelmed, and if you're looking to take your business to the next level, improve your strategy and sales, and connect with like minded professionals, you are in the right place. I invite you to visit eventbusinessformula.com and join our community of event business owners dedicated to exponential growth. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. And today I am delighted to speak with a friend who's currently on the other side of the world, but he's always somewhere in the world. He's traveling all over the place. He's got an amazing podcast. He got a We Are podcast. He got Amplify AI. He is helping a lot of organizations to basically implement AI and save time and get all the process. But more importantly, he wrote this book, Amplify AI, which I strongly recommend that everyone would read because it's not only about AI, but it's all the philosophy about AI. He's absolutely amazing. He's probably the most knowledgeable person I know in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Ronsley Seriojo Vaz. Ronsley, how are you, my friend?
Good, Eric. Thank you for having me. I appreciate a few things. Firstly, to be one of the first people to review the book. That was amazing. Thank you so much. And clicking a picture with the book, which I can tell you after taking 21 months to write the book, which, by the way, without AI would have taken probably 5 years. To see it in people's hands and see it appreciated is what a gift. So thank you for having me.
Of course, and I'm really pleased that we have the time to speak because I know you're traveling. You're in Brisbane right now. You're gonna go to India. We won't say where because then a lot of people will start reaching out to you. But you're in one continent after the other, 1 month to the other. But something I really wrote down, and I wanna mention that because somewhere in the book you said something like, "Wow, this is the reason why I strongly recommend everyone to buy your book." You say that it took you 18 months reading existing material, that you have 30 years of computing experience, that you took 4 years to do a bachelor in computer science and engineering, 3 years a master in software engineering, and 2 years an MBA majoring in psychology and leadership. I don't know anyone that has such a diverse background and that can really talk about AI. And this is what we're going to talk about it today, because it's not only about how we use AI. It's all the philosophy behind it. You're bringing your all your background, your academic background, your engineer, but also very concrete. So it's the philosophy of how we implementing it. I really love that. But before we get there, what is your journey and how did you get to what you're doing today?
Well, yeah, I forget that there's so much that has been done. I feel I've been blessed, I've been lucky, I've been privileged. I want to say that first. A lot of people are not as privileged as me. In a lot of instances, I was lucky that I had a dad that was a sports person. So, kind of helped me be competitive and be a sportsman at a very young age, which, in general, I believe that sport teaches you a lot because you put everything on the line. You have discipline, you train, and you get to a point where you go to a tournament and you could lose it all. You could, whatever success looks like is not what it is and what I think the outside world sees success, especially when you compete as a sports person. So you come, I think having that, I'm forever grateful for that. Another thing I've been very privileged and blessed with is I had the skill of grasping things quickly. Like I could learn at speed, and I've learned a lot of things at speed. So these are just advantages that, worked very well in my favor. Also, my parents made this decision to speak English at home, for comprehension and a whole bunch of other reasons, even to write a thesis right now. Like there's a reason. And people say a lot of things like I was in Austin and I gave a speech at the Opera House, the Denver Performing Arts Opera House, which is crazy. And one of the Vayner executives was in there, and she's like, "Wow, Ronsley, you're an amazing speaker." I'm like, "Yeah, I've been on stage since I was 10, and I've spoken to thousands of people since I was 12. I've been the captain of the debate team and the elocution team, and I was the captain of the general knowledge team, and I played all sport because I wanted to get out of class, to be honest, because they would repeat themselves in the class. And again, I was lucky that my parents put me in a public school and a Don Bosco school that cared about all these extracurricular activities. Because I learned to play the guitar, I learned to play the piano. I did all these things, and I wasn't even like 15 yet, you know? So very privileged in that sense. I thought I was a 9-to-5er. I kind of knew I was a computer person since I was, I think, grade 8. Since I was introduced, I was pulling, actually, one of the first memories was like putting this telephone wire into the socket and switching it on when I was like 2 years old, and the whole thing, because it's a core memory because of the smell of burnt smell and the sound and how everyone reacted. And I remember that very well. But I think I just like to learn things. I like to learn how things operate. So I just knew I wanted to do computers. So I've installed Windows 98 so many times that I remember the 25-digit code to enter on by heart. So just to give you references of, experience here, which a lot of people who met me know me as the podcast guy. And what's really interesting is how my first part of my career, which is computer science and engineering, and the second part of my career, which is talking to humans and understanding how communication works, has come together with artificial intelligence. So I feel lucky. So I feel there's so much to tell, and I feel it might be more relevant to talk about something useful that your audience might find useful.
I think it's very useful, and I'm always inspired by people I talk to, and by you for sure. You talk about your dad and competing. I think that it's also some of the values I try to teach my kids. First, I always tell them there is no additional credit in life. You know what they like to do at school? I don't know, even they call it that you have more than 100% because you have, there's no extra credit in life. But the same thing, competing, you cannot have a medal for everything. The participation trophy, I don't think it's building the right character in people.
A lot of things, I mean, even respecting the silver medal. Like you respect the bronze, you respect where you're at. You learn so many things when you're young, and you learn how to temper your emotions, because you could be winning, and if your emotions take over, you could lose. It's so quick. And once you're on that roller coaster as a sports person in that moment of a game competing, once you're down and you flip, there is no way to recover. You've seen people choke. That choking thing is real. It happens all the time. And once you experience it, it's an experience that, like, many people don't go through life even knowing what that feels like. To be trained and knowing that you can do it, but in the moment you choke, and all that capability goes out the window because your brain and mind has taken over, or emotions have taken over. So, wow. I mean, again, lucky.
Can a human being learn without failure?
Yeah, well, it depends on what you consider failure, I suppose. Right now in the world, failure, there's this stigma around failure, but I think in general, I don't know whether failure is a bad thing. Like, I think even when you ask the question, there's the connotation that failure is bad. It's not really. It's more like a trial and error sort of situation. In any situation, you're always correcting, recorrecting. When you're driving on the road, there's no way to know that from start, right? You're always correcting and recorrecting. So would you consider yourself a failure because you found something to correct and found it wrong and then recorrect it? That's the definition right now. So maybe it's not. I think institutions have tainted us because of the pass and fail situation as well. So I don't want to be seen as a failure in my cohort, so I won't try. So I don't know. I think maybe we're conditioned to fail to learn as well. I think we can learn without having failure as the way it is defined, I suppose. But because I think even you see babies correct, recorrect, without us interfering. And if we don't interfere, there's a really crazy video of parents outside a room, and the babies have been introduced with caretakers and to big snakes, massive pythons, and they have no fear. And the parents are freaking the fuck out outside. And they're demonstrating how parents their fear how is passed on to the children. And I was like, wow, that is crazy, because in general, parents just pass their fears onto their kids and then try to protect them from those fears that they pass them on. I only watched that video 2 days ago, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, what you say is very interesting. I'm not sure I would like to have my own kid with the Python and to make the point, but I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. My question was more that I do believe that no one starts something and goes straight to success without having hardship. Whatever you call it, failure, hurdle, whatever. I think developing the resilience and developing this ability to learn and yes, to correct the course, but really to keep going, to not giving up, to pushing, to follow your dreams, to make sure that you think about what the values that are important for you, and sometimes you're in a room where you might be the only one actually aligned with those values. That's more into having the chance of having great parents and education, I guess.
Well, ancestry and being an immigrant is a huge advantage, for sure, like massive advantage. To get my bachelor's of engineering and computer science, I mean, you read out all that stuff, but to get my bachelor's of computer science and engineering, it was 4 years. I gave 64 exams in 4 years to get that degree. And then I came to Australia to do my master's of software engineering, and full-time workload was 3 subjects. So after being trained to do so much of workload and then coming here 22 years has been like a holiday, to be honest. Here in Australia, it just feels easy. I was talking to someone else about this, actually, Doran, who's works here in the same office, yesterday, about something similar. He's come from Romania, and I was like, huge advantage to come from a different place, not only about the work ethic and all that kind of stuff and different value systems and etc., but also to be able to see both sides. Every time I go back, I see things that I've never seen before, even though they've been there forever. And vice versa, just taking yourself inside and outside of your normal, what you consider comfort zone. It's so valuable just for you to see perspective. That's what I think is most valuable, is perspective. So the failure and all these hardships, and that, I think that brings perspective. So if you can find ways to get perspective, maybe people don't have to go through it. But in general, yeah, you're right. I've not met people that have not had failures or some sort of like hardship along the way to anything great yet. And I've interviewed 1,500 people in the last 12 years. So I have not come across someone it's all been easy for.
That's a good lesson for any entrepreneur and any business owners and anyone actually. One thing that struck me in your background and what you said is that you have those two different aspects that are not really common. You're very good at sports, or you're very competitive in sports, and in the same time, you are captain of the debate team, which I'm not sure you find that type of profile very often. And then when we go further in your life, take us a little bit to the thinking process, to having all this academic background, and then going into having a restaurant, starting a podcast, which seems, I'm not going to say obvious today, because obviously podcasts are different, but when you started, it was not something very common. So what was the thinking process, and especially compared to all the upbringing you had academically and going in a field which, just like when I left the finance world and started in meetings and event, people would say, what, with your degree, you're going to do that?
It sounds like a great plan looking backwards. And I think usually it always does. When someone interviews you, it sounds like, wow, this guy planned everything amazingly well. To be honest, there was no plan. And if I look back in retrospect, I feel like one of the gifts that somehow I got to listen to, and again, huge kudos to my parents for even allowing or nurturing that part of me where I went with my gut a lot. Like, they encouraged this thing inside me when I was like, okay, after 3 years of doing Trinity College piano, now I want to learn the guitar. And they're like, oh. And then table tennis. He wants a table tennis bat? Like, for what? Does he even know to play table tennis? And then they find out like I'm one of this, like, in the team for the state, playing for the state. And they're like, oh, when did that, but they never discouraged me in that sense. So even when computers was a thing, like I probably was one of the only people that I knew that had the first computer that my dad, and I know for him probably at the time, it was really hard to afford the computer. So all those things gave me a huge advantage. So I went with my gut, and I just think that now it might seem like a great plan. I just kind of went, oh, let me try that. And I think that because my parents always gave me that security that they were always there in one way or the other, maybe I took that through life, not realizing that, you could get into $478,000 of debt.
Wow.
So naivety plays a huge role in this situation because this happens. So I've rock climbed, by the way, in 5 different continents. Montreal, Greece. I used to go to Greece to climb for just a month. And rock climbing is a really good sport to learn about your mental state because you have to leave all your ego on the ground before you get off. If that whole thing is about ego, you're not going to even see the holes that are right in front of your eyes because your lizard brain takes over because you're worried about falling. So it's all about the ego. And if you're worrying about the ego and it's not about the learning and it's not about being humble and understanding that you got this one moment to be part of this rock that very few people get a chance to do. And you have to learn how your body has to be on the rock for you to take the next move. So there's an appreciation for the process. So what I'm trying to get at is it's not the journey is more important than the goal. And I don't even know what the goal is. And people ask me about success all the time, but I've just been having fun. And that's all I can say. I've just literally been having fun, or trying to at least. And don't get me wrong, in that whole process, I've lost things and things have been uncomfortable. And in general terms, you can look at it as failure. But if you look at the learnings, which is probably the only thing I can take with me through my life, can't take a lot of other things, but I got a lot that I learned through the process.
I love that. What's in your mind and your heart is what you can take with you, and nobody can take it out. But yeah, that you can travel with that resonate a lot with my family as well. Um, do you remember the first time you really heard about podcast, or you say, you know what, let me try that? What the circumstances, and how did you decide to do that?
Yeah, I was still in debt. I think we had like 250, 200 bucks in the account left in cash. And I spent like $179 of that on buying the first microphone and little mixing desk and USB connector because at the time, we don't have the USB microphones that you have now. Again, what was happening was the restaurant had just shut a few months ago, and I was cooking for people in their homes, and I had some chefs who had spare time that was working for us in a sense that they were going to people's homes and cooking for them based on their meal plans and their taste stuff. And what we were finding was that they still had like fish fingers and McDonald's and weird stuff in their homes. So it's like there needs to be this education piece, and it should be for parents that are commuting to and from work to understand how our relationship with food is such an important part as a child that you take that through the rest of your life. You associate freedom with McDonald's, then you can't help yourself. For you to feel free, you want a McDonald's. You just associate. It's a brain pattern. It has to be broken if you want, if like internally hypnosis and that kind of stuff broken. So I started a podcast, and I thought what I did think was that if I could get, I don't know, 100 parents to listen, maybe 2 of them might become clients or something like that. But I had no real concept of that really. It was still new podcasting, so this was 2013. And again, because of being an athlete, I just thought I don't know anything about this. How would you train in this? And I did reps. I released a podcast Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 a.m. on the dot. And I think probably because that consistency was there, in 3 months, iTunes put it on the banner section of iTunes, and it was one of the 6 things that went around. And in 4.5 months, I had 1 million listeners, and suddenly became like the podcast guy, which is interesting because I always had kind of this imposter syndrome about being the podcast guy, which I don't have at all being the AI guy, like at all. In fact, I'm hoping someone would ask me a question that throws me off. I'm like, because I want to be challenged in this field. In fact, I was invited to the OpenAI Dev Day in Singapore, Eric, last month. It was the first event in 2 years, first AI event in 2 years that I could talk to someone and they could talk back and we could have an intelligent AI conversation
Really?
because they knew what was going on. Everyone else doesn't know what they're talking about. They're just marketing bros learning podcast or AI and talking about it. They have no concept of where we're at right now, the intelligence. They don't know the difference between search, information, and intelligence. They don't know the difference between knowledge and wisdom. So there's this big gap in people. It's like a sixth grader going to school and the seventh grader teaching them. That's what's happening right now. Every chat GPT expert is an expert. Like
Mm.
how when Facebook first came out, every Facebook person had an account and knew how to post or knew some of the back end, became a social media expert. But I think the reason for the book is there was so much to say that people have no idea about, right? There was so much to understand and layer. It's not just a chat GPT prompt that everyone's thinking it is.
Mm.
There's so many things that I play here, especially as a human race. And if we have to consider that at all in our equation, in our value system, if we care about the next generation, if we care about, like, a lot of us are saying some words that we don't know the real meaning. Like, I want to make an impact on the planet.
Mm.
What does that mean? I want to impact 1 million lives. What does that? You're just removing numbers out of your ass. Have you even done impact for 2 first? Like, try that. You know what I mean? Like, this, people are saying these things with no connection to the brain, body, spirit, from what they are. So it's just a very big disconnect. Long answer, but I
No, no,
hope
I
that
did.
answers.
I love the answer, and I definitely want to talk about the book and everything you just mentioned. I really want to understand because I'm very curious, and I'm curious about how people make decision and their life. So you start. Just want to come back briefly to your journey with podcast. So you start that, you have 1 million follower in 4 years. It's just in 4 months, just amazing. But you are passionate about what you're doing, and then you start helping other people with their.
Well, I had $500,000 of debt, right? So the restaurant just shot. I had $478,000 of debt. I had jobs, but I had like 5 jobs in 6 months or something. And then I
Mm.
started this business where chefs would go to people's homes and cook for them. And then I started the podcast and then get this 1 million listeners, but there was no monetization. There was listeners, but I didn't have an email list. I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't have a capture, nothing. I didn't even have subscribed to the show, nothing. Like, it was nothing. Um, so what happened was I was getting all these messages saying, teach me how to do this for my business. And I used to DJ, I'm a musician, so I knew how sound works. I knew the microphone, I knew how the connection worked. I'm a computer scientist, so I knew how to make the connections, which I realize now that it was not default for people, right? For me, it was default. All that stuff came easily to me.
Mm.
Um, Also, what came easily to me is not easily, easier was being able to speak because I had all this elocution and general, all this, experience, debate experience, and being on stage and stuff like that. Um, So I put out a Facebook post that said, I'm going to take on 8 people. Yes, 8 people, 2 one-on-ones, 6 in a group. If you want to start a podcast for your business, send me a message or comment or something like that. I had 32 grand in the account by the end of the week.
Wow.
And I was like, that went to paying off this debt. I did 19 of those sessions, rounds, cohorts, whatever you want to call them. In that time, I started the first podcasting conference in Australia, 2014. On the back end of that conference, also really short on cash, by the way. I finished that conference and got a bill for some AV thing, which was not told to us because you do events, right? I mean, it's such an important thing. Like, it was my first event. I had never done an event before. And I was short on cash on everything. It was just like, again, passion, right? It logically did not make sense for me to do the first podcasting conference in Australia or the Southern Hemisphere. It doesn't make sense. So anyway, in that time, I got this bill for $4,800 for the AV that we used. And we didn't have money. I didn't have money to pay that. And they were sending messages to the speakers. It was a mess. In my eyes. But in the long term, all the speakers were like, dude, just stop hassling this guy. Like, they understood what was going on, which is fascinating. For me, it was this, I can't show my face in public anymore situation. But it was just, and on the back end of that, I started the agency, which is Amplify, and that became $1 million company in like 9 months. And then everyone was like, "Oh, you're a success," and I'm like, "You have no idea the 11 years that took to see this part of the journey." But even then, by the way, it doesn't stop. Like, I still have been through the journey or up and down journey of an entrepreneur, and I don't know if it ever stops. I think cash is always going to be an issue, irrespective of what revenue you make as a business. You know. So there are times that you're going to get it wrong. There are times that, as a leader, you have no energy left to give the team. And if you've been, as an entrepreneur, if you've gone through this journey, you realize that you get to a point where you might think that's the only way for your team to function until you break down and you realize that a lot of people are leaving because that was the only way it was being fueled. And then you have to recreate that in a new way. So there's so many things to learn as an entrepreneur. I'm still a baby as a business owner, still learning, still very raw, still very fresh. Yeah.
So you grow the business, you start, you say, passion, an ID, let's go, and you're growing the business. How did you decide at some stage that, you know what, I cannot continue like that and I need to surround myself with other people? And what was the thinking process? And also, what did you decide to focus on from that moment on?
I always knew that team was important. I think I was always a team player, but I didn't know so many things. Like, different cultures are different. Like, I was brought up in a different culture, was operating in a different culture. What was kosher in my thing was not kosher here. So there was so many things to learn. Then there's different ways that generations evolve. Like, Gen Zs are different to lead. You've got to understand how that works. And then, when we started to have team in the Philippines, there's so many different things to learn there. Like, small mistake could mean different things, like, and you couldn't make it out of naivety, which happens most of the time. But somehow, again, I just take that and go, I've got to learn from this rather than, oh, this is the end of the world because it happened. So I feel, I'd say sports has got a lot to play in that arena. Competitive sport. I'm not talking about just learning to play a certain sport. I'm talking about going on to the court or the field, like, giving it everything. And you've been, like, giving it everything in practice, and you've been giving it everything in training, and you've been giving everything over and over again and you can still go there and you can still lose.
Did you surround yourself with intentionally with other people, other entrepreneurs? I know Mastermind is very popular now, but that, personal board of advisors, how did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I not necessarily a personal board of advisors, but I always surrounded myself with good people. I try to join places that I already saw good people already at. Or actually, I didn't try to join. To be honest, I didn't have any concept of this joining masterminds and groups business. I was very naive. I'm very new and naive to the business world, to be honest. I didn't know that that was part of how you did business, actually. I got invited. I know a lot of people apply to some of these places like Mastermind Talks, but I got invited and I had no idea that people were applying and that kind of stuff. So, and then when the invitations came, that's another thing that happened. Like sometimes in that I was in a situation that logically I could have not said yes to a situation, but I did it anyway. And as a result, now I look back and go, that's so lucky. I said yes, but there was no logic around that. So yes, definitely surround myself. And by the way, that is probably something I take very seriously, including myself. What I mean by that is I spend the most amount of time with myself. So if my energy is rubbish, then I'm exposing myself to my energy. And that is the first thing I need to take care of. If I'm complaining, if I'm bitching, if I'm moaning, if I'm looking at the world in a negative way, then I'm already losing because I'm exposing myself to that. So not only do I put myself in a situation where, I mean, don't get me wrong, I want to be there to take care of friends and be and sit with them in the darkness and be grieve with them and all that kind of stuff. But not when that is just their programming in general, that doesn't work for me. So I'm very cautious about those things. I'd rather spend time with myself than spend time with someone that is draining in that respect. However, my wife has given me a whole different perspective of this draining energy situation because she's a nurse, an ICU nurse, and she meets people at the lowest point in their life. And she has never called in sick a single day I've known her. And she looks at this whole thing very differently. And sometimes I feel so first world like really when, I compare the thinking. She's so nurturing and she's so giving and she's so sees everything as a gift. And I see it as oh, I've got to do this thing. It's like a chore, but it actually, I think that perspective helps in general. If you surround yourself with the right people, the right perspective helps.
I fully agree with that. I want to say that the perspective you have, the experience you have, everything you just mentioned right now, I don't think that anybody else than you could have written book Amplify AI. And the way it started, honestly, the way it started, it's more to me as a philosophical approach of, okay, there's this thing that AI, and everybody's talking about it, and everybody's talking about prompts, and everybody's talking about, yeah, wonderful, great. Why are we using it? What is the purpose? Well, what are we trying to do in this world when it comes to AI? And that's really the first part that I thought nobody else could have written. Can you elaborate a little bit of that approach that you see, and how should we be using AI in terms of, even before the business, but in terms of society?
I think there are certain concepts to explain first. The first concept to explain is the different ages that have come before what is now the intelligence age. So we have the industrial age, information age, and intelligence age, and each age needed to happen before the next age was born. So the industrial age commoditized industry. We have machines right now everywhere doing things that we're taking for granted, but at one time we didn't have any of those machines. So it commoditized industry and commoditized machines. That was the industrial age. And even at that time, we thought we were going to lose a lot of jobs. And even at that time, the industrial age gave more jobs, or 5 or 10 times more jobs than there were. Then the information age came along, and there was information easily available because the industrial age allowed us to build computers and allowed us to store data cheaply and conservatively, and not conservatively, cheaply and in a smaller space. So then it allowed us to save data and information that previously were very book-like. You had to go to the manuscript, find it to get access to it. That gave rise to the intelligence age, which needs the information and it needs the compute and the industry. It needs the industry. It needs the information for the intelligence to happen. That intelligence is a silicon-based life form, just like we are a carbon-based life form. We are a carbon-based life form. We require food and water to survive. Under the right environmental conditions, we thrive. It is a silicon-based life form that requires power and data. Under the right environmental conditions, it will survive and thrive. So that's going to be some of our biggest issues now to solve, is how do we get power and data? Now, if power is an issue, which it is, and compute is an issue, and it's going to become an issue, it's already an issue. The other part is data. If all the data that right now is part of history have been recorded by the people who've been in power, then it is a tainted history. And if you look at the world, you look at colonialism and you look at all the colonies, Australia, America, and by the way, North America is the only place on the planet, I think, maybe some parts of regional Australia, believe that that's where they're from, the white people. I can't even wrap my head around that. But you see the colonies, right? You see Americas, you see Africa's, India's, Australia. The colonials came and said, your indigenous way of thinking is stupid, is primitive. We'll show you the first world way. So they took them, put them in schools, put them in camps. There's enough history and of recorded history of this. And destroyed their wisdom, which now everyone's going back to. Everyone's doing yoga and shit. Everyone's doing meditation. Everyone's doing vipassana. God damn, these things have been around longer than the Bible. Like, just put that in perspective, right? It is, we're being so short-sighted despite having access to all this information. So intelligence is different. It is thinking, it is intelligent. It is, at one point, we didn't believe that life in plants were intelligent. As humans, we didn't believe that. Now we do, right? So I just want us to, listening to realize that this is a silicon-based intelligence. It's not information. It is intelligent based on the information it has. So right now, a couple of days ago, ChatGPT released a $200 version of O1 Pro. What people are going, oh, $200, that's such a big thing. You have to understand, for you to hire that person with that kind of IQ, you are not going to pay anything less than $250,000 to $300,000. That I'm talking about in a third world country for that kind of intelligence. So what, just because you've been exposed to $10 subscriptions, now $200? So context is important. So how we use AI, we're making these, as business owners, we make these great claims on our website. We care about this, we care about that, we want to make an impact here. This is why we started the business. Rather than using AI to get rid of your team, rather than using AI to get more money, use AI to keep those promises. Just start there. That is the basic, most ethical thing that you can do. Rather than talking about ethics, not knowing, having any background or place to talk about it. And just because you can think doesn't give you the right to sort of have an opinion or have a valid opinion without having enough information. And that's what's happening right now. Without enough information, people are like saying things. And if they have a big enough platform, that's being taken as gospel. And that is being going forward.
Yep, absolutely. And I've seen so many times. I'm actually tired of people that are well known in entertainment, for instance, that I love, telling me what I should be thinking in terms of politics or geopolitics or whatever. Or to your point earlier on, you know, with the specialist of Facebook that became specialist of COVID, that became specialist of international politics, that became specialist of Ukraine. Now they become a specialist of AI. I'm tired, and it's not because
now.
Right, exactly, in crypto. And it's not because you have a large platform that you should have an opinion on everything and that everything you're saying is correct. It's so up to us to actually question the validity of what we are hearing.
Right, 100%.
So when you look at AI this way, which again, it's more philosophical for me, which I love, then obviously you go into the application of it in as entrepreneurs, as even business owners, and using that, of course. And we're not going to go into the minutiae of the prompt. There's a lot of prompts that you mentioned in your book, which again, I recommend people to read. But what I would love for you to explain is, again, how you're using those prompts in AI but also going back to the basics. If, for instance, if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know your values, if you don't have the structure, if you don't have the processes, you don't know how and why you're using AI.
I think we got to understand as a business owner, so I want to be specific here. This is for business. I want to niche into business for business, right? And in business, the biggest jump is going from solopreneur to entrepreneur because there's other elements that have come in play: recruitment, operations, process, culture.
Yeah.
Think of this as that evolution. So you have to learn to delegate to an artificial intelligence. So you think of it as you're delegating to another human, but this human is very, very capable, but has no context of how you do things and how you think and how you would like things done. Because if you think also about the evolution of an entrepreneur, that's probably the biggest hurdle is there where you come across team and they don't understand what you want and you think that they're doing it on purpose and they're not doing it on purpose, but they don't have no information that you already have that you think is common sense. So with the AI, when you're asking AI and you're saying it can't really do what I do. That's bullshit, by the way. You're not using it properly. It can do what you can do and more and better. So I think in general, I'll give you context to that, okay? Like a business coach says this. I've talked to a lot of business coaches and marketers, and they're like, "Oh, AI can't do what I do." I'm like, dude, I can program in 21 languages, and AI can do that better. So all your stupid skills that you think you have are really minutia compared to what it can do and how it can do it better. What it cannot do better than me and can't do better than a business coach and all that kind of stuff is being a nurse or being a really good teacher, not being a doctor, not being a principal. I'm talking about very unique skills of being a human, being courageous, being collaborative, in connection with the higher, the good, right? So use human intelligence, augment the human intelligence with artificial intelligence, and align it with divine intelligence, whatever that looks like for you. Look, the greater good, God, universe, whatever you want to put there. But if you have all intelligence aligned, then you can use it for good. And how do you do that? You give it context. So from an application standpoint, you start to document your process. You start to document your thinking. You start to document your scripts. You start to document your indigenous way of looking at the world. And I'm talking about all of us, right? All of our wisdom has been lost. And we need to go and grab them back. We need to go and have the conversations with the elderly. How do they see the world? Just like you're doing right now. That's why podcasting now, 12 years on, and all the people that I have influenced, that's the thing that hits me the most, that there's all these people that are now doing the thing in their own way, whatever that looks like for them. It's being documented, it's out on the planet. That's it. That's how you apply it. Give it context. The prompt is not as important as the context you give it.
Ronsley, I so much love speaking with you, listening to you. And then I'm looking at the time, and I know you told me that in 10 minutes you have to go. And I'm just like, oh my God, where we are in the timing. So I still have 1,500 questions, but maybe to end with one thing that you just been achieving. You work with Gary Vee. And if you can explain what you've done for him, that maybe can also inspire anybody's listening, because you don't have to be Gary Vee and you don't have to have 100 employees to be able to think the way you've done it and what you've done with it.
Yeah. So I believe that this is the time for the artist. There are two types of business owners, right? There's the business owner that's all about revenue and making money, and there's the ones that's about art and they want to deliver and they can't make money because they're selling their soul and all these kind of excuses. Now is the time to use AI to do all the things you're bad at. Whatever it is that you're bad at, whatever it is, like you're bad at marketing, use AI for that. You're bad at project management, use AI for that. You're bad at content, use AI for that. So in Gary's situation, Gary just wrote a new book called Day Trading Attention. And he wrote the book primarily for his 2,000 odd employees who do day trading attention for his clients. right? And it is the exact algorithm and recipe to get attention on social media or on media in general today and going forward. How to find the cohorts, the platform and culture analysis, and create the content for that. So rather than someone reading the book, understanding the book, applying and personalizing the book to their situation, I created an AI that will ask the person 7 questions like, what's your target market? What's your product? What's your this? What's your that? And it'll ask 7 questions and you hit enter and it'll apply the whole algorithm to their business and it'll take less than a minute. So when you think about reduction of human cognitive load, think about how much you would have to do to apply that algorithm versus now you hit enter and you get it all done for you. So that is something that we can all apply. If you have a method on how you get clients and it's working for you, document that, apply AI to that. If you have a method on how you convert, how you attract, if you have a method on how you deliver, if you have a method on how you scale, if you have a method on how you do admin, it doesn't matter what it is. If you have a method and a process, document it, streamline it, customize it, apply intelligence to it, and then let it go. You have the ability to do everything right now with AI. My God, it is just, I just wish that everyone can do the same. So that's how you see it. See all the processes that you have and the things that are draining you, apply AI to that, and then make it autonomous so it is hands off. For example, I've created, for the to give you ideas and give the listeners some ideas, I've created AIs that will find the news for a company in their industry every week, the top 10. It'll apply their commentary to that news. It'll syndicate that on all the different social media platforms in their voice. And people are, for the first time ever, are going, I love your content. I feel like it's written for me. This is crazy because everyone thinks that AI can't write good human content. That's bullshit. That's a total lie. That's absolute bullshit. That is someone who's only ridden a bike trying to pilot a ship. They have no idea what the fuck they're doing.
Wow, wow, wow. Last question. How do people implement that if they don't have a Ronsley next to them?
So I think first documenting your processes is key, okay? Have that done. So in the simplest way, document what you do. Once you document what you do, then start to see how AI works. So understand that artificial intelligence is not something as simple as marketing on Facebook, right? Artificial intelligence is a combination of physics and chemistry and math and computer science and data, and there's 8 or 9 different fields that have come together to create artificial intelligence. So don't be naive to think that a YouTube video can just teach you what you need to know just like that. It's so unfair to the field that has taken so long to evolve that you just give it that kind of disrespect. So learn, dedicate yourself to understanding that this is going to be the biggest conversation of our lifetime. And your responsibility, if not for yourself, for your kids, is to understand and learn how it works. Wonderful. That's it.
My friend, it's the only frustration I have is I would like to, I would like to have, like Joe Rogan, 3 hours of conversation. There's so many that I want to ask again, but listen, it's always an honor, privilege to listen to you. I always learn so much listening to you. I'm really, I'm impressed with everything you're doing. I'm very happy for the book, Amplify AI, Ronsley Seriojo Vaz. Amplify AI is also your podcast. We are a podcast. I cannot leave you without asking you the one last question that has been inspired for me by Jason Gaignard, who brought us together with the MMT. When we meet at the next MMT session with a bottle of champagne, what are we going to celebrate?
So I've not said this out loud, and maybe this is not the right place to say this, but because it's just and I speak from my heart and I speak the truth. I think we will be celebrating us, Rochelle and I, having a kid. This is the first time I'm saying it, by the way. So maybe it's meant to be.
My
Amen.
friend, it's been a pleasure. Be well, safe travel, and I look forward to seeing you in person and celebrate you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business of Meeting podcast. I hope you found today's episode valuable. If you enjoyed the show, the most important thing you can do is leave a review and share it with your colleagues. It really helps spread the word. I truly appreciate your support. And if you're ready to take your business to the next level, don't forget to visit eventbusinessformula.com to learn more about how we are helping even business owners like you. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.